She's fouled.
Okay, so a foul was called, and you see Olivia Miles jumping up and down, showing the emotion. Hey, that wasn't a foul. Review that. Let's go. Let's go. I'm not going for it. I'm mad. Pay attention.
Emphatically wants to rebuke you.
The tension inside the broadcast studio became obvious almost immediately. What started as a normal basketball discussion suddenly turned into one of the most uncomfortable live television moments fans had seen all season after Cheryl Reeve publicly challenged Stephanie White over the way Caitlin Clark had been treated throughout the season. And once the conversation started, it escalated fast. At first, the focused on Caitlin Clark's growing influence around women's basketball. Sold-out arenas, record-breaking ratings, massive social media attention, everything fans had already been debating for months. But then the discussion shifted toward the physical treatment Caitlin faced on the court. Hard fouls, aggressive defense, constant pressure from opponents, and non-stop controversy surrounding how officials handled those moments during games. That is when the atmosphere changed completely. Stephanie White attempted to explain how physical play has always been part of professional basketball and argued that young stars naturally face intense defensive pressure when entering the league. At first, the explanation sounded calm and measured, but Cheryl Reeve clearly disagreed. The second White finished speaking, Reeve jumped in immediately. Her tone sounded sharper, more emotional, and fans watching instantly noticed the tension building live on air. According to viewers online, Reeve seemed frustrated by what she viewed as dismissive attitudes toward the level of attention and physical punishment Caitlin faced since entering the league. And once she started speaking, the entire conversation shifted. Commentators in the studio suddenly looked uncomfortable. The energy felt tense, and social media immediately exploded with reactions. Then came the moment that truly broke the internet. Reeve directly challenged the idea that Caitlin's treatment should simply be accepted as normal rookie adjustment. She argued that the spotlight surrounding Caitlin had created unique circumstances unlike anything women's basketball had seen before. And because of that, the league needed to recognize how massive the situation had become. Fans reacted instantly. Some applauded Reeve for defending Caitlin publicly. Others accused her of exaggerating the situation unnecessarily, but nobody ignored the exchange. Meanwhile, Stephanie White attempted responding calmly, explaining that physical basketball existed long before Caitlin Clark entered the league and that many great players faced similar treatment throughout history. That response only intensified the debate online even more, because fans watching did not see this as an ordinary basketball discussion anymore. They saw emotion, real tension, real frustration, and real disagreement about how the league was handling its biggest superstar. Then another clip from the broadcast started spreading everywhere online. The camera briefly showed the studio panel reacting silently after one particularly heated exchange between Reeve and White. The awkward atmosphere became impossible to miss. Commentators looked stunned, and viewers immediately started posting reactions, calling it one of the most uncomfortable basketball debates of the year. The internet completely lost control. Sports pages reposted the argument nonstop. Reaction channels uploaded breakdown videos within minutes. And fans everywhere started debating whether Cheryl Reeve had crossed a line or simply said what many people already believed. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark herself never directly commented on the situation publicly. That silence only increased speculation even more, because by this point, the conversation surrounding Caitlin had grown far beyond basketball itself. Every foul, every confrontation, every emotional debate involving her now dominated national coverage instantly. Then one analyst said something during post-game coverage that perfectly captured the entire controversy. When one player changes the visibility of an entire league, he explained, every conversation around them suddenly becomes emotional. After watching Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White clash on television over Caitlin Clark, millions of fans realized exactly how true that statement had become. As clips from the heated exchange between Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White continued spreading online, the debate surrounding Caitlin Clark somehow became even more intense. Because fans were no longer simply arguing about basketball. Now they were debating respect, protection, fairness, and whether the league truly understood the size of the moment surrounding Caitlin Clark's rise. Social media completely exploded overnight. Some fans praised Cheryl Reeve for publicly defending Caitlin and acknowledging the pressure she faced every single game. Others accused Reeve of creating unnecessary drama by turning ordinary physical basketball into a national controversy. The reactions became non-stop. Meanwhile, shows everywhere rushed to replay the argument repeatedly. Analysts paused specific moments frame by frame. Body language got dissected. Tone of voice became headline material, and every word from the live television exchange suddenly carried enormous attention online. The tension looked impossible to ignore. Then another part of the conversation started going viral. During one heated moment, Reeve reportedly pushed back strongly against the idea that Caitlin should simply expect excessive physical treatment because of her popularity. That statement immediately divided fans. Some agreed completely, arguing the league needed to better protect its biggest star. Others argued physical defense has always existed in professional basketball and Caitlin should not receive special treatment simply because of her fame. The arguments became brutal online. Meanwhile, the pressure surrounding Caitlin herself continued growing larger by the day. Every game now generated national headlines, every hard foul sparked debate, and every emotional moment involving her instantly exploded across social media. The spotlight around her felt enormous. Then commentators began discussing something much bigger than the actual argument between Reeve and White. What happens when one athlete becomes larger than the sport itself? That question suddenly felt impossible to avoid, because Caitlin Clark's rise had transformed women's basketball into a non-stop national conversation. Sold-out arenas, record ratings, massive viral clips. Everything around the league now operated under a brighter spotlight than ever before. And naturally, that pressure intensified every disagreement surrounding her. Then another behind-the-scenes reaction from the studio started spreading online. The footage showed commentators briefly sitting in silence after one especially tense exchange during the debate. Nobody interrupted. Nobody laughed. The atmosphere looked genuinely uncomfortable. Fans immediately noticed, because moments like that revealed how emotional the Kate Clark conversation had truly become inside basketball circles themselves. This was no longer ordinary sports discussion. It felt personal. Meanwhile, Caitlin continued handling the attention quietly in public. No dramatic responses. No emotional interviews. Basketball. That composure became one of the biggest reasons supporters defended her so passionately. While the sports world argued endlessly around her, Caitlin herself rarely fueled the controversy directly. Then one longtime analyst said something during a late-night segment that instantly spread online. The league wanted more attention, he explained. This is what attention looks like. The quote exploded across social media. Because after watching Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White clash publicly over Caitlin Clark, many fans realized the statement felt completely true. The spotlight surrounding women's basketball had reached a completely different level now, and with that attention came emotion, pressure, and controversy powerful enough to dominate the entire sports world overnight. By the following day, the confrontation between Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White had completely taken over basketball media. Every sports network discussed it. Every podcast debated it. And fans everywhere continued arguing about one central issue. Was Caitlin Clark being treated unfairly because of her massive popularity? The deeper the conversation went, the more emotional the reactions became. Some fans believed Cheryl Reeve simply said what many people had been thinking for months. They argued Caitlin faced unusually aggressive treatment because opponents understood how much attention surrounded her every move. Others strongly disagreed, insisting physical basketball has always been part of the professional game, and Caitlin should not be viewed differently from other stars. The divide looked massive online. Meanwhile, replay clips from the television exchange continued spreading everywhere. One particular moment especially exploded across social media. During the debate, Reeve reportedly challenged the idea that criticism surrounding Caitlin should simply be ignored. That's how the league works. The tone of the conversation shifted instantly after that. Fans watching described the atmosphere as tense, awkward, almost personal, and once those clips started going viral, the controversy became impossible to escape. Then commentators began discussing how Caitlin Clark's rise had fundamentally changed the pressure surrounding women's basketball itself. Before Caitlin, many league debates stayed relatively contained inside basketball circles. Every disagreement instantly became national conversation. That transformation felt enormous. The ratings, the sold-out arenas, the non-stop social media attention. Everything around the league operated differently now because of Caitlin's presence. And naturally, emotional discussions around her carried much bigger consequences too. Then another behind-the-scenes reaction from the studio started making headlines. Some viewers noticed how carefully commentators chose their words after the argument intensified. Nobody wanted to escalate things further. But at the same time, nobody seemed comfortable ignoring the tension either. That awkward balance became part of the story itself. Meanwhile, Caitlin remained publicly silent throughout all of it. No emotional response, no criticism, no dramatic comments toward anyone involved. That silence only made fans defend her even more aggressively online. Because while coaches, analysts, and sports media argued endlessly around her, Caitlin continued focusing on basketball itself. That professionalism earned massive respect. Then former player made a statement during a morning sports show that instantly exploded online. When one athlete becomes this important to a league, he explained, every issue surrounding them becomes emotional. The quote spread everywhere, because after watching Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White clash publicly over Caitlin Clark, many fans realized the statement perfectly described the situation. This was no longer simply about fouls, or officiating, or physical defense. It was about the growing pressure of managing the biggest spotlight women's basketball had ever experienced. Then perhaps the biggest realization of all. The argument itself proved just how much Caitlin Clark had already transformed the sport. One player had become powerful enough to dominate television debates, reshape media conversations, divide fan bases online, and force the basketball world to confront questions the league had never faced at this level before. That reality felt historic. And after another emotional controversy surrounding Caitlin Clark exploded across the sports world, one thing became impossible to deny. The Caitlin Clark era was changing far more than basketball games alone. As the controversy surrounding Cheryl Reeve, Stephanie White, and Caitlin Clark continued dominating headlines, the conversation around women's basketball reached a level of intensity few people had ever seen before. Because suddenly this was no longer just about one television argument, it became a reflection of the enormous pressure now surrounding the entire league. Fans continued dividing into passionate sides online. Some believed Reeve was absolutely right to speak out publicly about the treatment Caitlin faced. Others argued the media obsession surrounding Caitlin was unfairly overshadowing every other player and storyline across the league. The debates became non-stop. Meanwhile, clips from the broadcast kept spreading across social media at unbelievable speed. Reaction channels analyzed every facial expression. Sports podcasts dedicated entire episodes to the exchange. And commentators everywhere started asking the same question. Had Caitlin Clark's popularity fundamentally changed the emotional atmosphere of women's basketball forever? That question suddenly felt impossible to avoid. Because the evidence seemed everywhere. Sold-out arenas, record television ratings, massive celebrity attention. And now, live television debates involving Caitlin instantly becoming national sports stories overnight. That level of attention changed everything. Then analysts began discussing another uncomfortable reality. The bigger Caitlin Clark's fame became, the more pressure everyone around her started facing too. Teammates, opponents, coaches, officials, commentators, everyone suddenly operated under an enormous public microscope whenever Caitlin was involved. That pressure looked exhausting. And perhaps that explained why the exchange between Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White felt so emotional to fans watching. Deep down, people sensed this conversation represented something much larger than one disagreement. Represented the growing pains of a league exploding into mainstream attention. Then another moment from the television segment started going viral online. During one particularly tense exchange, the studio briefly fell completely silent after Reeve passionately defended the idea that the league needed to recognize how unique Caitlin's situation had become. The silence afterward felt heavy. Fans immediately noticed the mood shift. Because in that moment, the discussion stopped sounding like ordinary sports analysis. It sounded personal, emotional, almost symbolic of everything happening around the league right now. Meanwhile, Caitlyn herself continued remaining publicly composed through all of it. That calmness only increased admiration from supporters online. While the basketball world argued nonstop around her, Caitlyn stayed focused on the game itself. No public feuds, no emotional responses, just basketball. That mentality became one of the biggest reasons fans connected with her so deeply. Then one respected broadcaster did something during a late-night segment that instantly exploded online. "This is what happens," he explained, "when one athlete becomes larger than the league around them." The quote spread everywhere. Because after watching the Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White confrontation dominate sports headlines for days, many viewers realized the statement felt completely true. The Caitlyn Clark conversation had grown far beyond ordinary basketball discussion. It became culture, emotion, and nonstop national attention all at once. Then came perhaps the clearest realization of all. Whether people supported Caitlyn Clark, criticized the media attention around her, or felt somewhere in between, nobody could ignore her impact anymore. And after another emotional controversy shook the basketball world, one thing became impossible to deny. Caitlyn Clark was not just changing women's basketball. She was changing the way the entire sports world talked about it. By the end of the week, the fallout from the televised clash between Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White had grown far beyond anyone originally expected. Started as a heated discussion about Caitlyn Clark's treatment on the court, had now become one of the biggest talking points in all of sports. The internet refused to move on. Every new Caitlyn clip reignited debate. Every hard foul sparked fresh arguments. And every interview involving league coaches or players suddenly carried pressure because fans expected someone to address the controversy again. The atmosphere around women's basketball felt completely different now. Meanwhile, sports media continued analyzing the deeper meaning behind the emotional exchange. Some commentators believed Cheryl Reeve represented frustration from people who felt Caitlyn's rise had created impossible expectations across the league. Others believed Stephanie White simply tried defending the reality of professional basketball while avoiding unnecessary drama. But fans saw emotion, real emotion, the kind that only appears when the spotlight becomes overwhelming. Then another statistic started spreading online that shocked many viewers. Clips involving Caitlyn Clark controversies were now generating numbers comparable to major men's sports headlines across social media platforms. That reality stunned analysts. Because whether people loved the attention or hated it, the engagement surrounding Caitlyn had reached historic levels. The pressure surrounding the league looked enormous. Then commentators began discussing how quickly the conversation around women's basketball had evolved in only a short period of time. Not long ago, debates like these rarely escaped dedicated basketball communities. Now, they dominated national television, sports radio, social media, everywhere. Caitlyn Clark sat directly at the center of it all. Then another emotional reaction from fans started going viral online. During a live sports show discussing the controversy, audience members erupted into applause after one analyst defended Caitlyn's impact on growing the league. That moment instantly spread online because it captured how emotionally invested fans had become in the conversation itself. People no longer viewed Caitlyn Clark as simply another athlete. To many supporters, she represented the future of women's basketball. That emotional connection changed everything. Meanwhile, Caitlyn continued handling the nonstop attention quietly and professionally. While headlines exploded around her daily, she stayed focused on games, teammates, and competition. That calmness became one of the biggest reasons fans respected her even more. Because despite becoming the center of one of the most emotionally charged sports debates of the year, Caitlyn herself rarely appeared interested in fueling controversy publicly. Then one longtime basketball analyst made a statement during a late-night segment that instantly spread everywhere online. Whether people realize it or not, he explained, this league is experiencing a cultural shift in real time. The quote exploded across social media, because after days of non-stop debate surrounding Cheryl Reeve, Stephanie White, and Caitlyn Clark, many viewers realized the statement perfectly captured the situation. This was bigger than one television argument, bigger than one foul, bigger than one emotional debate. It was about a sport entering a completely different era of attention, pressure, and visibility than ever before. And after another week dominated by Caitlin Clark headlines, one thing became impossible to ignore. Women's basketball was no longer fighting for attention anymore. Now it was learning how to handle having too much of it. As the controversy finally began slowing down, one reality still remained impossible for the sports world to ignore. Caitlin Clark had completely transformed the emotional intensity surrounding women's basketball. The argument between Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White was never really just about one television segment. It became symbolic of something much larger happening across the entire league. Pressure, expectation, and the challenge of navigating a level of visibility women's basketball had never experienced before. Meanwhile, fans continued debating every part of the situation online. Some believed Caitlin deserved stronger protection because of the extreme physical attention she faced every game. Others argued that true superstars naturally deal with aggressive defense and emotional reactions throughout sports history. The divide never fully disappeared, but perhaps that was the clearest sign of Caitlin Clark's impact itself. People cared deeply now. Every foul mattered. Every debate exploded. Every emotional moment became headline material. That level of passion surrounding women's basketball once seemed impossible. Now almost daily. Then commentators began discussing another fascinating reality. The controversy itself may have unintentionally revealed just how valuable Caitlin Clark had become to the league. Because whether people defended her or criticized the non-stop attention surrounding her, everyone kept talking about women's basketball. Constantly, that visibility changed everything. Television ratings climbed. Arena crowds grew louder. And sports media that once barely discussed the league suddenly dedicated hours of coverage to it every week. The transformation looked historic. Then another emotional moment from a recent broadcast started spreading online. A young fan attending a game held a sign reading, "Caitlin made me love basketball." The image instantly went viral. Because in many ways, that simple message explained why emotions around Caitlin Clark became so powerful. To millions of fans, she represented excitement, inspiration, and the feeling that women's basketball had entered an entirely new era. That emotional connection could not be manufactured. Meanwhile, Caitlin herself continued responding the same way she always had. By playing basketball, no public feuds, no dramatic interviews, just performances that kept drawing massive crowds and non-stop attention everywhere she went. That consistency earned enormous respect. Then one respected sports journalist, something during a national broadcast that instantly spread online. The arguments around Caitlin Clark are exhausting sometimes, he admitted. But they also prove something important. People are finally paying attention. The quote exploded across social media. Because after weeks of emotional debates, viral clips, and non-stop headlines surrounding Cheryl Reeve, Stephanie White, and Caitlin Clark, many fans realized that statement perfectly summarized the entire situation. Women's basketball was no longer fighting to be noticed. It had officially become part of the biggest sports conversations in the country. And whether people loved the attention, hated the controversy, or felt somewhere in between, one thing had become impossible to deny. The Caitlin Clark era changed everything forever, and now the entire basketball world is divided over one massive question. Was Cheryl Reeve right to call out the treatment of Caitlin Clark, or did Stephanie White make the stronger argument live on TV? After all the tension, viral moments, and non-stop debates surrounding Caitlin Clark this season, one thing has become impossible to ignore. Women's basketball has completely changed. But now we want to hear from you. Do you think Caitlin Clark is being treated unfairly? Has the media become too obsessed with every controversy surrounding her? Or is this simply what happens when one player becomes the biggest star in the sport? Drop your opinion in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because in the Caitlin Clark era, even one live TV debate can shake the entire basketball world overnight.